Not so abandoned house. I grew up in a small desert town in California. At the time of this event, we were living in a horrible trailer park. There were abandoned houses all over town that everyone loved to explore, and it was just something that we did. There was one pretty close to the trailer park, and we went there to play a lot and look around. There was a fallen roof that was fun to climb over, and a couple buildings to play in. Anyways, one day, me and this other girl that lived in the trailer park decided to walk over there. We walked onto the property, and we round a corner of the house when we realized that there was a car parked in the yard. It looks empty, so we decide to check it out. As we get closer, we realize a man is sitting in the driver's seat, laying down and moving his arm. I didn't realize until later that he was masturbating. I freaked out when I saw him and turned to leave, but he had seen us already and said hi, and my friend stopped me, saying she knew him. He started talking to her, and it seemed like they knew each other. He asked her where her family and her were living now, and she pointed to the trees that surrounded the trailer park. Suddenly, he asked us if we wanted to make $50. I back up at that, my heart dropping into my stomach with fear, but my friend said yeah and asked how. He asked us to suck his cock, and before he'd fully finish his sentence, I was running back home. I stopped at the fence that outlined the yard and waited for my friend. I probably waited almost a minute before I saw her, and to this day, I have no idea why it took her that long. It wasn't a long run to where I was, and she should have already rounded the corner of the house if I was at the fence. She's getting closer, but I see him too. He started his car and is driving towards us. She catches up to me, and we run down a dirt trail towards home with him close behind. Luckily, there's a ditch that runs parallel to the trees outlining the trailer park, and we jump in and run down that, where he can't follow. I look back to see him backing up and turning down the abandoned house's driveway, then getting on the highway. We stopped and caught our breath before running the rest of the way home. We called the cops, but nothing ever came from it. The House on the River. When I was in my late teens, my friends and I have a hobby of finding and exploring old abandoned farmhouses. There used to be a lot of them out in the country, and we would explore at night, usually without a flashlight or any previous knowledge of what we were going into. We challenged ourselves to walk in darkness while our eyes adjusted, and the only light we had was the flash of our cameras. We explored probably 25 houses over the span of 5 years, and had only a couple scary experiences. This one was by far the scariest. One night, my friend Dave and I took our girlfriends to our favorite house. It was on the banks of the Merced River in Central California, and it was a farmland. It was a 10-minute walk down a canal bank to get to it. It was a dilapidated, old 2-story house and contained no furniture. There was a barn about 100 towards the front of the house, and some sort of police system across the river, but we never dared to try it. My girlfriend Jessica was apprehensive, but I told her I had explored the particular house several times and that nobody would bother us. She finally agreed, and we parked the car and enjoyed the nighttime walk down the canal with Dave and his girlfriend Angie. There were no other nearby houses and very little traffic in the area. At the house we explored, a bit before I set up my camera for an interior group shot. I set the camera on the floor and walked back to Dave and the girls and waited for the shutter to click. The camera flashed, and I walked back to get the camera when the room lit up briefly. Dave said, "Car!" and we quickly moved away from the front windows towards the kitchen. The flash we had seen was from an approaching vehicle. There was another road onto the property that usually had a locked gate. What we didn't know was if they had seen our car at the other entrance around the corner and were looking for us. A old beat-up truck stopped at the barn and idled for a bit. We couldn't see if anyone got out of the truck, and there was no way to walk back down the canal without passing by or walking exposed. The girls were freaked out, and we kept telling them to be still and that the truck would eventually leave. After an agonizing wait, the truck started to move towards the house. I hoped that it was going to use the wide area to turn around, but instead, somebody in the truck turned on handheld spotlight. The living room lit up brightly as we dug below kitchen counters one room over. A loud, bellowing voice said, "Boys, come on out! Don't make us come in or you'll be sorry!" and identify themselves as cops. We stayed low and did not move. After continuing to identify themselves as cops and threatening us with violence, the truck idled to our side of the house, and the kitchen lit up brightly above our heads. I started to lead the group back into the living room on hands and knees. I looked around the corner and saw a man at the window. A passenger had gone out of the truck and was attempting to get onto the damaged porch. I didn't think he saw me, and I quickly moved back and pointed Dave and the girls towards a laundry room at the back of the kitchen. It had a blocked exit, and another door led us to a back room with an open rear window. Dave jumped out and helped the girls down. After I jumped out, we ran into the darkness towards the river, keeping the house between us and the slowly moving truck. Once in the trees, we ran blindly, stumbling into large depressions in the earth. I don't know how we didn't suffer any injuries. We made it about halfway back towards the car when we had to make a run from the tree line. The truck was parked at the back of the house with the headlights facing in. The place was ablaze with light coming out of every downstairs window. We made it to the car and drove the opposite way with the lights off. A couple months later, we drove by, and the house was gone and it looked like it had been burned down. Sometime after that, a long dead body was discovered in the barn. If I remember correctly, there was a murder conviction over a drug deal gone bad. I've always wondered if it was the same people that nearly caught us that night. You need to leave now. I live in a relatively small town in Texas. There are a little more than 100,000 people, and the more densely populated areas are actually pretty modern. But once you hit the outskirts, everything becomes more and more rural. Lots of twisting country roads, small churches and neighborhoods, and pine trees everywhere. In other words, it's a little slice of Bible Belt heaven, at least on the surface. Years ago, when I was still a teenager, my friends and I would do what many small-town teenagers do at night on the weekends: complain about the area we live in and just try to find something to do. Most of the time, that would mean we were hanging out at Starbucks or scouting for anything going on at the lake. Pretty popular place among the young folks. But more often than not, we go down those county roads looking for creepy stuff. Lots of the more quaint rural areas became a lot spookier at night, like tall trees casting dark shadows on old buildings, distorting their features, the silence of the woods, small backpack graveyards, etc. So, visiting these places was kind of exciting to us, and definitely more thrilling than most of the shitty horror movies we'd all seen 100 times. My best friend Reed had heard of a really creepy house on the outskirts of a side of town that I had hardly ever visited. The population isn't huge, but the town itself really sprawls, so we decided to go check it out one day around noon to see if it might be worth coming back to at night with our full crew. At this point, it's just me and my friend. We arrive at our destination, and it's like nothing I've ever seen before. This place just straight up feels wrong. I was more creeped out by this place in the daytime than I was by any of the places we'd visited at night. Let me set the scene. After about 3 or 4 miles down this road, it takes a hard left turn. You're still in a heavily wooded area, but you see a clearing in the road about half a mile down. Once you hit the clearing, you notice 2 things: a somewhat neglected looking church on the left, and right across the street on the right is a very run-down, foreboding 2-story house. It's hard to put into words just how damn creepy this house was. The porch was sunken and beginning to rot. The yard was full of rocks and tangled thorns, and the windows, all of which were broken, were extremely dark, even in the daytime. That's just the beginning, though. Once you take a moment to realize the kind of take to this house, you look back across the street at the church and realize that it is no less creepy. It is a squat brick building, spanning about 150 feet along the length of the road, and directly connected to it on the left is a playground. The playground itself is a little dilapidated and abandoned looking. and connected to it via chain link fence is the biggest friggin' graveyard I've ever seen. This place is perfect. We tell our friends and decide to come back later that night. However, creepy this place was during the day, it paled in comparison to the feeling you got from it at night. The clearing that the house and church stands in has 3 streetlights, but the rest of the county road was dark. So here was this house and frigged up church in this area of road, washed in the sick orange light from the streetlights and darkness everywhere else. Reed and I come back with 3 or 4 of our friends, so there were about 5 or 6 of us total. I'm a big dude, but I've got to admit that it felt nice having other people around at this place. We got out of the car, busted a couple flashlights, and decided to take a look in the house. Holy shit. Broken glass, needles, little candles, and spray paint everywhere. People are clearly using this place to get high, but there's something else going on as well. I start to look around at some of the paint and see messages like, "It burns," and "They come," written on the walls. Looking closer at the floor, there's spray paint there as well, but no messages, just pentagrams. Pentagrams everywhere. As we all notice this, we continue to explore outside of the house because fuck that shit. We come inside and start discussing whether or not we should check out the church or graveyard, and my friend decides he'll light up a joint that he brought along while we all talk it over. The very instant he starts to light it, we're hit by a floodlight not 50 feet away, you guessed it, the cops. But he drops the joint as the cops call out to us, and we start to walk over towards the unmarked car. Cop never noticed the weed. He asked us what we were doing here, and we answer honestly, checking this creepy ass place out. He just kinda goes, "Oh, okay. Just stay out of here though, don't go back inside," and let us carry on, which I thought was kind of weird. We pretend to look around for a little more. That one guy was covertly looking for the J he dropped but never found it, and we decided we'd head out. On the way to the car, we parked in the church parking lot. The cop signals me over to him. Shit, I think. Did he see that joint after all? As I get to the window, the cop beckons me closer to him and says in a very low voice, "What did you see in there?" "In the house?" I asked. Needles, glass, paint, and candles, rubble. It just kind of looks like a trashed out house." "That's it?" he asked. I nodded. "You're very lucky then," he said. "You need to leave. Now. Do not come back." I open my mouth to ask why, but he just shakes his head, repeats the same message in the same flat tone. "You need to leave. Now. Do not come back." And points me towards the car. "Message received, sir." The house has since burned down, and that area is pretty empty now, but it still has a very creepy vibe. Please, whoever it was inhabiting this house, let's not ever meet. The Old Man Upstairs. I got a lot of good responses to the Liverpool story, so I figured I would add another. Having had a lot of experiences and lived all over the world, I could probably fill this subreddit up, but we'll just take it one at a time. About 3 years ago, my parents purchased a bank foreclosed property. It was a 10,000 square foot mansion, which they planned to renovate and either turn into an event hall or flip the house. While construction was going on though, we needed someone to stay at the house and watch over everything, so my girlfriend and I moved in. Now, while this was going on, I like to tell her stories about how the mansion was actually a murder house, which was true. but only in the sense that the previous owner killed his wife somewhere else and then just bolted. It sure creeped her out at night though, and that made me laugh at the time. Boyfriend of the year, ladies. We did quickly discover that, while the house was foreclosed and abandoned, homeless people like to use the pool in the back, sneak in through the window to use the built-in microwave, turn on the AC, or use the toilets. For the most part, when we told them people own this property, they agreed to stop coming, except one old man. The first time we met him, he knocked on the pooled side door and a construction worker answered, who then for some reason pointed him to us. The homeless man, who we'll call Dan, explained that he lived at the house and he needed us to all get out. I explained that he didn't, and that I understood that homeless people came here while it was abandoned. We weren't going to allow that anymore. "No, no," he kept repeating. "It's mine. You have to get out now." I told him that he had to leave. He responded by defecating in his pants. Time to call the police, I thought. The cops knew him by name, took him out, and I was left to clean up a streak of feces out the door and up the driveway. I had hoped that was the end of it. 2 weeks later, we returned from a day trip to Six Flags, and Dan is pounding at the door. He was screaming that his medicine was inside. My girlfriend and I stayed in the car while she called the police again. We were so focused on the call that neither of us noticed the wrench in his hand, which one of the construction workers must have left lying around. He starts to come up to the car, I see the wrench, and I gun the ignition and go back up the circular parking lot with him chasing behind us. God help me. Part of me wanted him to follow us onto the road and get hit by a friggin' car. When we returned with the police, Dan was gone, but the glass part of the rather expensive new door we ordered was smashed. I sighed and dealt with it, as I would rather the door be smashed than my head. The police said they would send a patrol car up every so often, since the house was so close to the station, but there's not much else they can do besides check his usual haunts. Fair enough, I guess, and the officers leave. We go inside, do our usual business, and are laying in bed talking before going to sleep. Talking soon turns to other things, and pretty soon we're kissing to take our minds off things. The bedroom is set up that there is a sitting area apart from the main bedroom area, and it's separated by French doors made of glass. So we didn't notice when the door to the sitting area from the hallway slowly opened. We especially did not notice the person holding a small garden spade. If not for me needing to hit the light to get something from inside the nightstand, we might never have heard someone drop the metal spade on the floor and go running out the door. We both slipped on our clothes and ran outside the bedroom door to see someone basically rip the lock out the front door and kick it open to get outside. They took off like an animal, not even making a sound when running. We called the police, whom at this point seemed slightly tired of coming to this house, and checked around with an aluminum baseball bat in hand. Our guess was that he simply ripped out one of the weaker door frames in our room, and because of the ongoing construction, we simply didn't notice it, and he hid in the attic until it got quiet. They never found him, and we moved shortly afterwards. We think he still shows up there occasionally, as speakers have been removed from walls, AC units have been stolen, and massive holes just show up in the wall sometimes. I'm just glad I no longer live there.